Hello everyone and welcome to this Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer showcase. In this 1v1 match, I'm going to be playing the Dark Elves led by Malekith the Witch King. And guys, we're going to be facing off against Indie Pride and Milk and Cookies Total War. We'll be playing the Lizardmen. So let's jump right into this game, guys, and take a look at some of these new units. So on the front line, I do have a combination of the Blackguard Corsairs, which are a high DPS anti-infantry unit. They're going to be anchored by the more elite armor-piercing Blackguard and Nagrand. So it's definitely good to have this unit diversity in your front line for a multitude of reasons. So the Blackguard Corsairs are really going to shine versus lightly armored infantry because they do have a true bonus versus infantry of 7, however they do have very low armor-piercing values. So you pretty much want these guys fighting against the Skink Cohorts or even the Saurus Warriors who only have 60 armor, but you really want to avoid the Temple Guard and the more heavily armored dinosaurs. In the center, I do have the Blackguard or Nagrand, who are pretty much the Swiss Army knife against the Lizardmen. I definitely think they're one of the better units on the Dark Elf roster. So if we take a look at their stats, they do have 150 in armor, so if they're fighting against infantry that don't have good armor-piercing values, they're just going to simply bat them aside. On top of that, they have a pretty good melee attack of 37, very, very good melee defense, and more importantly, they have good armor-piercing values and a bonus first large, which is very important against the Lizardmen. So if we go ahead and take a look over here at the Lizardmen units, they do have the Saurus Oldblood, which is his lord, 100 armor, and it's monstrous. He does also have the Saurus Scar Chieftain, who has 100 armor. Then you can see the Bastillodon right here has 140 armor. So you definitely need a ton of armor piercing to deal with the Lizardmen. And if he does have the Temple Guard in the front line, which I think he does, he has the Saurus with the shield, and then he does have the Temple Guard who have 85 armor, it's definitely going to be very helpful to have the armor piercing of these Blackguard of Nagrand. So that's pretty much it for my front line, and before we advance, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the Murderous Prowess. So this is kind of a racial trait of the Dark Elves, and it's applied once you reach a threshold. So once you get 429 kills in a battle, your entire army gets this buff. So you get 15 leadership, 25% melee attack, you get a charge bonus, you get 20% to your armor-piercing missile damage, which is going to help your dark shards in the back line, and you also get 30% vigor, which is huge. It's definitely going to help you to stave off the negative effects of fatigue. But you do need to kill 429 troops, which isn't always easy. So in Indie Pride's army, he has 844 troops, so we need to kill roughly half of that army to get this procced. And, you know, I can foresee in a multitude of matchups it being very hard to get to this, especially against, like, the Dwarves or these very sturdy defensive factions. But if you do get that proc, man, it really gives your army a huge power spike. So on the secondary line, guys, we do have the Dark Shards, which are basically just missile units. And these guys have armor-piercing attacks in 125 range, and they have, like I mentioned before, very good armor-piercing values, which is usually very unusual on a missile, or I guess I should say a bow-type unit. Usually you're going to see armor-piercing on handgunners and thunders and things like that, but getting armor-piercing attacks on a good arc like this is so nice. For example, if there was enemy infantry, let's say right in front of my Blackguard Corsairs right here, I wouldn't be able to hit them with these guys because I would be obstructed. But since these guys are technically like bow units, I can shoot up and over and still get that good armor piercing, which I think is going to be one of the biggest strengths of the Dark Elves. In the back line, I do have two groups of the Cold One Knights, and these guys are just MVPs. They have such good stats. I mean, their melee attack and melee defense aren't particularly high, but more importantly, they have a bonus first large, which is quite substantial of 14, and they have armor piercing. So these guys, in my opinion, are pretty much a must-have against the Lizardmen. They're also going to be good against the Empire, who bring like Demogryph Knights and Reichsguard and things like that, but against the Lizardmen, they are huge, because as we mentioned before, the Lizardmen have a ton of large armored things, the Saurus Oldblood, the Bastillodon, all that kind of good stuff. So that's it for my backline cav. I also do have some Dread Spears back here, which are pretty much just rank and file spears. And for my lord, guys, I have Malekith, the Witch King. So Malekith, let's go ahead and pause it so we can give him the justice he deserves, is an absolute monster. He has very good combat stats, 53 melee attack, good melee defense, a massive armor-piercing damage of 350 right here, with a total weapon strength of 500, and he has a ton of abilities. So let's go through these. He has Spiteful Conjuration, so whenever you cast an ability, it's going to affect all enemies map-wide and take away 15 armor, which is quite nice, and it looks to last 18 seconds. That's pretty big. He also has the Circlet of Iron, so this is an item that you have to bring. It doesn't simply come with him. So it gives all enemy heroes a 50% miscast chance across the entire map, which is really, really nice. Magic seems to be a lot stronger in Total War Warhammer 2, so I definitely recommend bringing this item when you guys jump into the game. He has Noxious Breath, which is kind of for his black dragon right here. Look how gangster this dragon is. He's so mad looking. And he also does have the Power of Darkness. So this is one of the things that makes Malekith extremely competitive, in my opinion. It basically, well, and it's available to the Lore of Darkness, but he hurts himself for a friendly caster for 2 magic on a 22-second cooldown, and it basically just massively augments his winds of magic. It's going to give you a really, really good recharge rate, essentially, and allows you to use some of these fancy spells. So on top of that, we do have, let me go ahead and see here, the Power of Darkness. We went over that, and Chill Wind. So Chill Wind is a cone ability, costs 5 winds of magic, and applies Frostbite. Doesn't do a ton of damage, but cone abilities right now, or these breath attacks, guys, you can cast them and then re-angle them. So once I do some live battle casts with this game, I'll make sure to show you guys that. But you can actually angle your breath attacks now from, like, if I'm right here, I can shoot it right here and then go to the left or the right if I want to, which is so cool. So on top of that, Malekith also does have this really good ability called Soul Stealer. So the Power of Darkness that I showed you guys before actually hurts him. It takes away his health, and it's kind of counterbalanced by the Soul Stealer. So this is a single target ability, also does AoE damage, very similar to Final Transmutation, but it essentially DPSs everything it's hitting and heals him. So quite a nice synergy. Then the Gaze Malice. So this ability right here is another cone ability, but it's not something in his lore of magic. He actually just comes with this. So you can use this to kind of blast units. Let's read the text. If looks could kill, oh wait, it turns out they can. So edgy. And he also does have the standard ground, which is pretty staple for lords. And he has a physical ward save of 20%. So definitely a lot of tools at his disposal, guys, but he's very expensive. So the last unit I do have over here is this this Reaper Bolt Thrower, which is pretty much an anti-large ballista, but what's really cool about this thing is it can be switched. You can put it in an anti-large mode, so it fires single target DPS missiles essentially, or you can split it to like anti-infantry where it shoots like a big splash of things. It's very, very neat. So that's pretty much it for my army, guys. My apologies for the long-winded introduction, but there's a lot of new stuff to show you guys. So Malekith's flying in right now. He's actually going to be using his breath ability, so hopefully I get a chance to show you guys. So for Andy Pride, he does have the Saurus Warriors in the front line who I hesitate to call the rank and file of the Lizardmen because they have 52 weapon strength, and they also have pretty good combat stats, good leadership, and a little bit of armor, but not enough to really be effective against like the Black Ark Corsairs. They also have bronze shields. In the secondary line, he does have these Temple Guard right here, which are kind of the elite Lizardmen infantry. They have 42 weapon strength, bonus for large of 16. They also have very good armor piercing, so he's definitely going to want to get these guys on top of my my Black Guard. Otherwise, these Saurus Warriors, who do have good weapon strength, they do lack armor piercing a little bit, so they're not going to really do well against the Black Guard in the front line. On top of that, he does have a Skink Priest with Heavens, and it looks like he does have let's go ahead and see what Lords of Magic he has, and the Skink Priest is so cool. He has the Comet, so he's going to be dropping some bombs for sure. He does have the Curse of the Midnight Wind, which you guys know, negative 30 armor and melee attack, and he also does have a Cold-Blooded. So pretty much all of the Lizardmen Lord type units have this, and it's self-healing, which is so darn good. But you can see he is being affected by the Circlet of Iron, so he's definitely going to be hurting himself a little bit. In the back, Andy Pride has a few groups of skirmishers, which are definitely going to be annoying and pretty good at harassing. What's cool about them is they have 48 movement speed and they apply poison, so they can almost slow down Cav to the point where they can outrun Cav, which is pretty neat. Then in the back, Andy Pride does have the bread and butter of his army, the Saurus Scar Veteran, which has anti-large and armor piercing, very good stats. It does have cold-blooded as well. And then he has the Saurus Old Blood, which is his legendary lord. This guy has the Amulet of Itzel, which gives him a ward save of 66%, and he also does have a cold-blooded. So pretty much they all have that self-healing, which makes the Lizardmen really, really strong. Fear and terror, but more importantly, I got to avoid these guys like the plague. They have anti-large and armor piercing, so Malekith definitely has to pick his engagements very wisely. So guys, without further ado, let the games begin. So Malekith is going to start the battle right here, and he's going to do his breath attack. So this is kind of the putrid breath of the Black Dragon, and it's just going to blast some of these Temple Guards right here. And it looks like it actually killed 7 of them. That's actually really good. So the breath attacks, if I'm not mistaken, they all have 3 charges, so you can use them, several times over the course of the battle. And then I also used his Hateful Glare ability right there, but I didn't really get a good hit. I kind of miscasted it. Still getting used to that new cone aiming ability, but nonetheless, it can do some really good damage, and it's on a short cooldown as well. So Andy Pride's going to be advancing on me right here. He does have his Saurus Old Blood as well as the Scar Veteran coming up and around just to explore things and kind of keep Malekith in check. So I'm going to kind of posture up right here. I do have the missile advantage. I have the Reaper Bolt Thrower, and I also do have my dark shards over here. So I'm going to be able to kind of sit back and let him come to me. But he has some strong infantry for sure, and something else I forgot to point out in his army, he does have this this Pastillodon with the crystal on it. So the crystal essentially gives the ability to single target heal. So the Revivification Crystal. Try saying that fast. That is a massive tongue twister. But allows him to use a targeted heal. It's on a 45-second cooldown, and there's 10 charges. So that's a pretty cool kind of cool unit there. Definitely would like to try that out myself. So right now, the Reaper Bolt Thrower, I did switch it to anti-infantry mode, so it's going to fire as a volley. So you guys see it shoots, and it has a big spread. So I'm going to be going after these Temple Guard. I know these are his strongest unit, but Andy Pride, realizing they're being targeted, used the Crystal, which actually healed them quite a bit. Did a nice little burst of healing there, so he mitigated quite a bit of that damage. So right now, Malekith is kind of hanging tight, and he's probably going to use that breath attack right now, so I just really want to take out these Temple Guard. So look at the damage, and then I use his Glare, so 2 for 1, just melting those Temple Guard, which is really, really going to help me out in the infantry fight, because Temple Guard are quite beastly. For some reason, I thought they had a big charge bonus, but it's only 14. The Saurus Warriors with shields actually have one charge bonus of 16, it would appear. So you can see the Bolt Throwers here getting a nice little barrage on the Temple Guards. Granted, Temple Guards are pretty good against missiles because they have a decent amount of armor, and they also do have the shield. So I wonder how the shields apply to that kind of spread fire like that. So I decided to switch and start shooting into these more fodder type units to see if I could get a little bit more value. You can see the Saurus Old Blood, or his lord right here. I do use the Bolt of Doom. So if we look, Malekith shoots, it's actually a heat-seeking missile. So guys, a little PSA, you guys probably noticed it did almost no damage. However, if I had overcasted it, it applies massive armor piercing damage to the spell, and probably would have been able to do like 5, 6, or 700 damage there. So a little bit of a mistake there. So you guys can see as I'm racking up kills, I'm starting to get some murderous prowess on the top, so I really need to get that applied. And you can also see my dark shards are starting to fire into some of these Saurus warriors in the front line, which isn't the best use because they are shielded, but nonetheless the fighting is about to start. So in the front, you can see my infantry are probably going to charge right now. Yes, my Corsairs and my Blackguard and Nagaron are going to charge in here, and it's going to be a very aggressive pit fight. You can see the lizards doing their leaping animation, and it's definitely going to be a party down there. So Malekith's kind of flying overhead looking for a home, and I do have some extra Corsairs here that I'm going to engage in just a moment. And Malekith is so good. He just has so many tools, and this is just ripe for kind of an AoE ability. So it looks like there's something going down right here. It must be the Curse of the Midnight Wind, and it looks like, yes, Indie Pride did indeed cast that, so very well played. So in the back line, you can see there's a bit of a T-Rex dinosaur battle going on. So Indie Pride did try and go after my my Dark Shards back here. So I pulled them back, and I pulled my Spears and my Cold Ones, who have anti-large and armor piercing, to chase off these guys. But Indie Pride wisely pulls out. That same note, Malekith is using his breath attacks to do some pretty good damage, but he's really going aggressive after my guys right here, and there's definitely going to be a feast going on. So you can see the Saurus Old Blood charging in there and just absolutely ravaging these Dark Shards. So they're not going to have much fun here. They didn't take a ton of damage, but you know, after a few seconds and a few of these sustained attacks, they're going to take a beating, and it looks like he's probably going to pick up one of these guys and eat him. Yeah, he picked one up. I think he actually tosses it in the air here in a second. Yeah, so he grabbed one, he tosses it, and then the T-Rex jumps up and eats it. So cool. So Malekith does land, and my Cold Ones, the Cold One Knights, excuse me, are all going to jump on the Saurus Old Blood. So Indie Pride does respond by casting the Amulet of Itzel, which gives him 66% ward save against all types of damage. Very well played. If he had not done that, his Saurus Old Blood would have undoubtedly gone down here or been very low, because that was a ton of burst damage there. However, he's going to get away here. I do have my Cold Ones continuing to chase, and Malekith is also hot on his tail, definitely with some fancy business going on. So the Dark Shards are continuing to pepper Indie Pride, and that's one of the big issues for him in this battle, is he hasn't really gotten back to my Dark Shards, and they're just firing free range. I'm using another Doom Bolt here. You can see he does use the Crystal to heal, and he also does have the Cold Blood ability to heal him, so there's definitely quite a bit of healing here. So you guys know that grim feeling when your Lord is very low and you're kind of like, I'm just going to lose the battle because my Lord is so beat up. The Lizardmen have a ton of tools against that, which is quite nice. So you guys see that big purple aura? My units now have murderous prowess, so they have all of these buffs. So I'm going to get a massive power spike right now, which is going to be very devastating to the Lizardmen. So the Dark Shards right here are shooting in here and kind of disrupting some of these Temple Guards, which are an armored unit, so the AP is definitely going to pay off there. And in the meantime, I'm pulling back my Cold One Knights and just going to reform ranks right here, and I'm just basically waiting to see where he goes. In the back, I tried to get some of my Blackguard Corsairs to chase down these skinks, but he just keeps poisoning me and out-kiting me there, which is very tough. You can see Malekith's AoE damage, his AoE blast doing some huge damage, and he's also able to terror out some of these Saurus warriors over here, which is huge. But Indie Pride definitely sees an opening in my army. He's able to get on these Dark Shards here in the back, but I do have my Cold One Brigade coming in, and now they have that murderous prowess, so they have vigor, they get extra charge bonus, which is going to be really nice for them, and they also get leadership and melee attack. So my Dark Shards over here are going to turn and start shooting at this Saurus Old One, and he probably does pop the, the Cold Blooded, which is going to give him healing, but on that same note, it also lowers his melee defense, which is going to make him very susceptible to all this burst damage, and Big Daddy Malekith is coming, the Witch King himself, Sauron is coming in here hot and heavy. So Indie Pride does respond by bringing his Saurus Scar Veteran over here, which is going to support, but you can see that Saurus Old Blood is taking a ton of damage, and it's going to be very tough. So Malekith lands in there, gets a great rear attack, and he also pops Soul Stealer. So Soul Stealer, like I mentioned before, is very similar to, I wouldn't say Fated Buna, but it has kind of a similar characteristics to Spirit Leech, but I guess it's more like Final Transmutation from lower metal. It does some big damage and also heals Malekith to full health. In the front line, you can see my Blackheart Corsairs, my Blackheart and Nagaron are holding. Granted, the Temple Guard on the far side are really doing well against my elite infantry, which I was pretty surprised about. But the one thing that Indie Pride is struggling a little bit with is taking care of my troops in the back. He had a very elite army with these very expensive kind of dinos here in the front line. And you can see this one does go down here. So my backline was able to kind of fire relatively unimpeded. Finally, some of these Saurus warriors with shields are going to get onto some of my missiles here in the back and my bolt throwers. But the damage has already been done. That bolt thrower was shooting the entire game at the enemy lord. You can also see the Dark Shards back here, for the most part are in full health and have been firing unimpeded this entire time. So you can see Big Daddy Malekith does have the Curse of the Midnight Wind put on him, but he's really laying a beating on the Saurus Scar Veteran. He has so many good, magic tools, and you can see he pops the Power of Darkness, which is going to hurt him, but it also is getting me that Winds of Magic. Over here on the far side, you can see this is kind of the final battle. The Blackheart Corsairs and these guards over here are fighting against some of these lizards. And you see that little exclamation point above their heads, or this kind of aura? That means they're rampaging. So essentially, Indie Pride has lost control of them, and they pretty much just fight as they please before they rout off, which is one of the drawbacks, because a lot of the Lizardmen units have pretty outstanding stats. However, they do kind of lack in that same respect because they berserk, so you lose control. So that's kind of the trade-off with the Lizardmen. So So yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the army. One kind of a criticism, not criticism I would have, but just suggestion would be, for the Lizardmen, the Dark Elves do have some very powerful backline troops. They have those, the Dark Shards, and they have Shades, and they have these Reaper Bolt Throwers, and all these different things, which are very powerful, that are pretty much going to be key to their victory. If I hadn't been able to shoot at the Source Old Bloods with my Dark Shards and this Reaper Bolt Thrower for most of the game, they would have been really aggressive. They would have torn up my infantry in the front line. It would have been a very different game. So what I would recommend is maybe cutting one or two of these Source Warriors and then just getting a horde of the Skink cohorts. If you had pressure on my flanks, it would have been very tough, because the Cold One Knights aren't really good against, mass infantry. They're more of an anti-large specialist. So I would have had a lot of trouble dealing with like a horde of Skink infantry. But again, that's just my, anecdotal observation. This is actually the first game I played with the Dark Elves, so I'm sure there's a lot of, different army compositions that would work, but that's just my 2 cents. As far as this army goes, I was pretty happy with the Blackheart Corsairs and the Blackhearted Nagrand. The Dark Shards did well, didn't rack up a ton of kills, but they did some pretty good damage to the Source Old Blood. The Bolt Thrower seemed to do its job. So I was definitely happy with that, but again, this army would be very weak to a wide army composition. I would get swarmed on the flanks, so perhaps I might need to adjust this army a little bit if I were to play. What I would probably do is maybe cut one of the Black Guards and get a few more spears on the flanks, and I think that might be okay. But anyways, very well played to my opponent, Indy Pride. Look forward to facing you again, my friend, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that Dark Elf showcase. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.